record. So I would like to welcome everyone to the new year, 2026, Seattle Software Crafter Meetup. This is, I don't know how many times Llewellyn's kicked this off, 5 or 6 times, kicking off the new year with us. And he always does it with great topical and current topics. And a quick thing about Seattle Crafter Meetup. We're a meetup not specifically dedicated towards a language or a process. However, we're about code craft and how do we get better at the craft of writing code and staying current with things. Um, we're involved in the community. A quick plug to Agile Open Northwest 2026 that's coming up. Cody thankfully put a link in the chat channel. Agile Open Northwest is an open space conference, and it's like it's sort of like Mongolian barbecue. You're going there for a tech conference, and it's up to you to make it awesome. And if it's not awesome, then maybe you shouldn't have put that broccoli on your plate. Um,
So I
so,
feel like my first Agile Open Northwest was like 2008, somewhere 2007 in that time.
uh-huh.
And I was fortunate enough that Woody Zool was like, he just said, he was like, go. And I didn't realize he hadn't been yet. But so like, I just trusted Woody. So like, I went, and I went not knowing what I was getting into. And then when I got there, a lot of people were like, I don't know. I was really nervous coming to this, but I wasn't nervous because like Woody told me to go. But like, they were nervous because it was like they didn't know there's no schedule, right? Like they didn't know what to expect. And they're all like I think there's also some nerves that are like, oh, like it's what you make of it. And you're like, oh, well, maybe I won't make enough out of it. But like I found that like, Agile Open Northwest in specific and open spaces in general are like a combination of like the space and the people. And Agile Open Northwest has an amazing space and amazing people. And you are going to have like the thing that you need, you're going to find that weekend, even though you don't know what that is. And the most amazing part is you don't know what it is ahead of time, but it's going to find you anyways.
Yep. And I think you're one of the few people that I've heard, not few, one of a few people that say it's a go-to conference for you every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a plug for Agile Open Northwest. And Llewellyn, I actually met you for the first time at an open space,
Yeah.
uh, at Agile Open Northwest, and I was going, "Who is this guy talking all the same things?" And what the heck? And it wasn't until after the conference that I was talking with Paige, Garrick, and a few other folks, and it's like, "Oh yeah, that's Llewellyn. He's sort of weird, but he gets it." Uh, and so then I saw you later at more conferences, and that's when I consider it a friendship, good
Absolutely.
professional friendship started. So I've known Llewellyn for a few years now. I've coded with him. He's coded. He's given me a whole bunch of techniques that I steal and liberally use, and talk about and give him credit for when I remember most of the time. And he's a good friend of the Seattle Crafter Meetup. And today he's gonna be talking about something very topical. And I just put soft skills with AI, getting AI to do what you want. And I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah. I've changed the title, but yes.
Perfect.
Uh, and there. Everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I'm Llewellyn Falco, and I, this talk has taken like some interesting turns in the last week. This is like a thing that has been really kind of important to me, and I've been trying to like narrow it down. So welcome to my talk, Personal AI Wizardry. This is actually like the second title I came up with, or the third title. Ooh, there we go. An alternative title would be, if you're only doing code with agentic AI, you are doing it wrong. So let's talk about what I mean by this. Uh, my favorite characters in Harry Potter are Fred and George. Right? And the reason I love Fred and George is because in a school of like hundreds of students, all learning magic, they are the only ones that actually like create product, right? Like everyone else is just learning like in the moment, I can do this thing with my wand, right? Or maybe I can make a potion. But like Fred and George create a whole bunch of really, I think, amazing magical projects. A lot of them are just to like, help you get out of class, um, or play pranks on people. But I think of it in a slightly different way of like Fred and George's life revolves around just having fun, right? And so like these are the things they can create that make life better for them. And the amazing thing is when you create those things, that magic doesn't just stay like with Fred and George when they have the wand. Like it goes to anyone who is able to touch those products, right? I think that's amazing. And on a computer, like when I'm writing code, I also feel like a wizard. Like I feel like I can just do magical things and sort of anything. Um, but there's a very constrained box to that, right? And I don't just mean robots, right? Like maybe someday robots will come, but they're not here right now. But even now, I tend to be like, as long as I'm writing code, right? Which for the most part is still occurring like when I'm writing code for large companies, right? Like there's some code I write for myself, but not a ton of it. And as soon as I get outside of that box, it can become really hard to do things that I want to do. Like my magic starts to phase. Even the other day, I was trying to automate something on my phone, and I was like, I didn't have the ability to do it. And the neat thing about AI has been that box has been expanding, right? Like my ability to create things and be magical has been expanding. And so I want to share some of that with you. And I want to talk about things that aren't code, but I want to start with something that's kind of close to code. Oh, actually, before I do that, let's talk about this, which is okay, if I'm not writing code, which even when I am writing code nowadays is less actually writing code, what are those skills as a programmer that are useful to me? And I think this is the thing that programmers are really good at. And like you can go through almost all of our crafting disciplines and you will see this over and over again. Like we are good at managing complexity. We have built skills on that. And usually we do that by seeing abstractions and creating reusable pieces. You'll see that when you do test-driven development. You'll see that when you do refactoring. You'll see that when you do minimum viable products, vertical slice. All of this stuff is managing complexity. Right? That is something we are good at. Okay, so here's a story from about a week and a half ago or so. Um, I have a standing Thursday meeting with Scott where we work on approval test in Java. Right? We get together and we do some stuff on there. I've been talking to this guy on Discord, Stefan. He's out in Germany. And he sort of made this comment of like, oh, I'd be interested in seeing what it's like when you work code. And I was like, oh, why don't you just join this meeting? So this particular meeting also had Stefan there. Right? And we got this issue. It's issue 750. It's kind of a weird little issue. The person said like, hey, I'm using Surefire plugin and I had to set this variable and then it worked. That's a weird issue, right? Because almost every other issue is stuff doesn't work. Please fix it. That's kind of what issue means, right? But this issue is just like he's like, hey, I did work. Did I do it right? Which means like we can reply to this issue by just saying, yes, you're doing it right. Uh, we know that he's doing it right, or I knew he was doing it right, because we got a much more traditional issue about a year ago. This was issue 608. 608 was also using the Surefire plugin, but at that point in time, it did not work. So we had to change things to allow it to work. So anyhow, like we could just say, yeah, you're doing it right, but I see this problem as slightly different. I see it as like, why did this person write this issue in the first place? Right? Like, systemically, what's wrong with the system that this issue even got written in? And he said here, I didn't see it documented. And that's what I think the actual issue was, right? Like, and I'll tell you, like, I care about documentation a lot more than I used to, through a combination of a few things. One of which is Claire, who's on this call. Claire really helped me like appreciate documentation. But it's still the thing that like is most likely to slip if I am short on time or energy, or like it is easily the thing that I'm going to ignore if something's going to get shorted. Um, to write documentation, we use this theory of documentation which sort of puts things in four quadrants. And this one seemed obviously like it was a how-to guide. I should have written a how-to configure for Surefire or something along those lines. I have a lot of how-to guides. Here's one of them. This is how to do it in parameters test, but you can sort of see it. It has this like there's a pattern that's in here, and they kind of feel like Stack Overflow post, right? It's like here's the problem, here's the solution. So now, like I have all the pieces, right? All I need to do is go through and get like reload the details of that solution and the problem and the pieces into my head and write up this markdown document for how to do this for Surefire. It's probably going to take like half an hour to like 90 minutes, somewhere in that kind of thing. Except for we don't live in that world anymore. So instead, we go to Claude Code. So we open up the terminal and we start by saying, please read issue 750 and 8 or 608 using the GitHub CLI. And at that point, Stefan was like, what is happening? Like, he was not aware that you can even ask. The beauty of agentic is you can ask it to do things and it has access to tools. Right? This is the right solution, but we need to make a how-to doc. You can see an example of it here. So all the information that was sort of just given to you, I just gave to Claude with these 3 sentences. And then instead of like, half an hour later, about 20 seconds later, we had this document created, which nicely outlines like what the problem is and like how you're going to solve it. Even gave examples for different scenarios, including the Surefire. Here's exactly what you need to do. And what that means is I can go back and not just say, yeah, you're doing it right, which is just we're spending time to help this one individual, but like our system can actually get better, right? We can say like, hey, you're doing it right. We create some documentation for it. Thank you for pointing it out, right? You're not just inconveniencing me by making me check your work. Like you made my system better because you took the time to report this issue. If you think of the components of that prompt, right? Like there's data that's coming from those issues. There's examples that are sort of like the examples themselves are spelling out a whole philosophy on how to docs and little details and stuff that I don't even have to say. There's our code base because we're using Agentic, so it always has access, which means it can pick up the things it needs to do that. And then, of course, there's the impromptu. That's those 3 lines that I wrote. All of that comes together to create Markdown documentation, which is not code, but at the very least is code adjacent. Garrett, you have a question?
Yeah, real quick. Did you either validate that that actually worked yourself on your own machine or ask them to validate?
The result?
Yeah.
Oh, we were able to just look at it and remember, like, yeah, that's how you set the environment. So it was a validation, but it was a very brief one. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so like here's a place where I can use those things to create something that isn't code. I want to go farther though. I want to expand. Alexa, stop. Okay, so next I want to talk about Christmas. So I was home for Christmas. My parents are out in Phoenix, and so I went home there. Christmas is a big holiday in our family. So I'm there for like 2 weeks. And my dad had a heart valve replacement about 2 years ago. Right. He's in his 80s. Martin or Matthew, you have a question before?
Yeah, for the previous issue, is
Yeah.
your documentation repo set up in such a way that you can accept contributions from external sources?
Yes, and it's the documentation is just part of the repo, so it just shows up in GitHub. Yeah. Okay, so I'm home for Christmas, and I'm talking to my dad, and he was sort of telling me about some concerns he had around like his stamina and his balance, and he's like, I'm not sure. But the way I saw that is like, oh, you are not doing your physical therapy, like you're not doing your exercises, right? And my dad is 80 and basically hasn't exercised much of his life, period. Um, but I'm there and I'm there for 2 weeks. So I'm like, hey, I can get him to at the very least work out while I'm here. Um, I am not a very big exercise person either. Um, but I was mentioning this to my partner Sarah, and she was like, "Oh, you should just talk to AI." And I was like, Of course I should. Of course, that's what I should do." And so, what I wanted to do is, I wanted to make sure that the exercises we do would be effective, and also like they're not going to be painless, right? Like pretty much me going to the gym with my dad is my dad complaining the whole time. Like for the coaches in the room, that's part of coaching, right? Like, but but I want it to be at least as painless as possible and as effective as possible. Because if it is, then I can get him to the gym the next day, right? I can pretty much get him to the gym at least one day, just from the fact that I'm his son and he loves me. But like getting him to go again, that's going to be a stretch. So what I ended up creating was this video. We would go on our phones and we'd sit down on the bikes, and this video would play in real time, and it would tell us like what we're doing, right? And it has like this bar at the bottom, sort of going through there. As I go forward through here, there's different sections of our exercises, and you can tell where you are for that. Even like when we're doing the sprints, it'll go green when we're in the easy part of the sprint, and then red in the hard part of the sprint. And this is like a 22-minute video, and we just literally take our phones out, put it on the bike, and do what it told us to do. So how did I create this? All right. Well, the first thing is like there are now AI things that will create video, stuff like Sora and stuff. It's not going to create a 22-minute video for you. And the thing that it's magical about is making a video that looks like it was shot with a camera. It's not good at like timings and text, and like that's not the thing it's good at. So, like I said, one of the things programmers are good at is managing complexity. Let's take a bigger thing and break it into smaller things. Right. And so the first part I wanted to create was, and I'm not even sure what I want, what do I even need my dad to do when he exercises? Like what will be effective for the problems he was describing with me? And so I broke this into a smaller problem of just let's create a workout plan. Okay. And so I had a fairly detailed chat with AI, and I ended up with this markdown document of just a a workout plan, right? So like, okay, now I know what I could do. I could print this out and bring it to the gym, but then it would be paper in my hand. I'd have to bring up a phone timer and do all this while pedaling on a bike and somehow convincing my dad not to stop pedaling. So like this is good, but it's not nearly enough. And so then I did this thing which I find myself doing more and more, which is say, okay, don't try to think about how am I going to get from this one thing here, but let's separate this into a pipeline of individual pieces. And this is another thing that like we are good at as programmers, right? And it's not something that's just natural. Like it's a thing we've been training, right? Like if you think of learning to break things into minimal viable products, or like vertical slices where it's like each step is deployable. It's not just I'm doing a piece and a piece and a piece. It's how do I separate this problem into something where I can like the result is usable, right? Is moving me forward, is not just completing part of a task. And so I split this into that first part where we create the work. That's a completely separate context. And by context, I mean like an AI context. Then the next part, which is taking that workout plan. And what I actually did is I had it create a Python program for me that would generate the video. And then there's this third step where I run the Python. That's not even AI. Like I still think of it as a pipeline, but it's not even AI, right? And so splitting stuff into these pipelines, like that is part again of what we are good at as programmers. And so I gave it that workout plan and I created this video, and this was horrible. First of all, running the Python alone took 45 minutes, and it created a 3 GB file. And I knew right away, like part of creating stuff is iterating, and if you want to iterate, you need that sort of fast feedback loop. 45 minutes is like just killing me. So I went to AI. I used a pattern called reverse direction and said, "This file is really big. Uh, how can I make it smaller?" And it gave me a bunch of suggestions. One of which was like just reduce the resolution, like it was in full HD. It didn't need to be, so I did turn that down. But the other thing it said is like maybe drop the frame rate from 30 frames a second. It was suggesting 20, but like this thing doesn't change by the second, so I dropped it all the way to 1 frame a second, and that really changed how quickly it created and how big it was. And it dropped to 45 seconds to create and 3 MB as a file when it was done. So this made a much better cycle time. And then I was like, well, I really need to see where we are in the process. So we added this section timer. I want to know where I was in the overall workout. So we added the section bar at the top. And then I actually needed to know where in it was. So I added a pointer for it. And then I also realized I need to know the difference between when we've gone from a hard part of the sprint to an easy part of the sprint. It needed to be more than just the words changing. So we add the red. And now I have the video that I want. However, if I look at that middle part, that workout plan being turned into the Python, that is now a lie. Right? Because that workout plan didn't produce that. It produced this. And I knew that the moment I got my dad actually to the gym, I was going to need to like change this and modify it, right? And that's like another thing that like I think we learn. Like part of managing that complexity is not just you get it right the first time. It's actually quite literally you get it wrong the first time, but that you can continue to work and maintain that, right? And so I went back and I used two other patterns, extract knowledge and knowledge document. And I created a middle step, right? Which is I had it create a markdown describing the video, not just the workout. And you can see through here, and it has stuff like colors and timings and stuff. And that is the thing where if I needed to change stuff, I can now change it. And I can change it in two ways. I can say, I'm changing the workout document, change that to update the video document. And I can change it to, I change the work or the video document, change that to change the Python. All right, so there's still that pipeline of flow. And this is what I mean by wizardry. Now, my programming skills, my ability as a programmer is helping my dad like live a better life. Like that is way outside of the computer. I can't wait till this is more universal. Like I would love to be able to use my programming skills to make my house be cleaner or fix my roof or get my yard in shape. Like it's not there yet. Maybe someday. All right. I'm going to tell another story. At some point here, I'm going to give you a demo, and hopefully this is a good idea. So I went to a retreat. It was like a week-long intensive retreat. It is as far from programming as you could get. It was very woo-woo. But it was something I wanted to do personally. And I like when I do these kind of things, I have a tendency to journal during them. And I journal during them for two reasons. One, I just need to process all the stuff that's happening. And this helps me to do that. And then the other is usually so much stuff is happening that I can't even remember it all. And so there's a part of me that's just like, I just want to be able to remember what the hell happened this week. So here is the process that I use to do it. Now, I am not going to share those journals with you for a multitude of reasons. But what I am going to do is try to do a demo of this live with you. We'll see how that goes. Okay, well, so first of all, this is a fairly long flowchart here. We're going to break it into pieces because, again, it's a pipeline. So the first piece is I'm going to create a journal. I'm going to talk into that journal, right? That is going to create what I refer to as a vomit version. And then I'm going to commit, right? So let's do this. So here I'm in Windsurf. I need to create my daily journal. So I'm going to click on my Python thing and say, run this because I use the script everything pattern. So hey, now I have a journal that's empty. Now I'm going to vomit into this. Let's see how this goes. What have I done today? So today I started with a client in Europe. We spent 2 hours working with them and introducing AI. It was the first time we did a mob. I'm going to skip over a lot of those details because should not be sharing them on video. After that, I was able to join Yvette and Emily Beisch. They were doing an AI and agentic code on the lean poker code. And in there, we were able, so we're on a Linux machine in the cloud, and we worked on solving an issue and then turning that into a slash command to make it so that we can repeatedly hit issues more quickly. Yvette did this neat thing where when it reads the issue, it asks us a whole bunch of questions using like a refine and clarify process, and then takes the result of that and actually just comments on the issue in GitHub, making it like the first part of the pipeline, and then we can go from that. And then finally, I gave a talk at the Seattle Software Crafters. Steve had invited me to do it to start, and I think he actually called me like 5 or 6. No, he called me 7 days ago, and he was like, "Hey, are you still up for it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, January." So I've been putting that together and talking about a lot of the things that have been important to me recently around using my skills as an engineer in different ways. All right. So you can see this is garbage. All right. I'm going to modify one thing here really quickly because I did talk about Yvette, and I just want to have a chance of that being spelled correctly. Not sure if
No
that
E.
is
No E.
no E like that.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Um, and then also Emily. Okay, so I have this people file here. That's important. And then I'm going to go to GitHub, and I'm going to make a branch here. Seattle 2026. Bring my changes over. And just so you can see this, there we go. So I'm going to make a commit here, right? Which is just vomit version. I do that as a checkpoint because whatever is about to change, I want to be able to undo and then also just track what's happening. Okay, so here I have this. I think we can all agree. It looks like garbage. It has like lots of filler words. This is just junk. So now I'm going to go to Claude. If I can find it, there we are. And I'm going to say, please read cleanup process and apply it to today's journal. Okay, so first of all, can you do this as a skill or as a slash command? The answer is yes. I'm doing it explicitly because I think it's clear what's happening. All right, while it's doing that, I'm gonna go back to our thing. So here, that first is what we just did. We created the journal. I talked into it. I got a vomit version. Next, I'm going to do the cleanup. So that cleanup actually brings in that PeopleMD file, right? It's a little bit of context. And it's going to create a version 1, which I am going to review. So it has done it. It's also offering me suffixes. Lean pullers, / commands, crafter talk, AI sessions, agentic coding, and speaking. I think I'm going to go with number 3. I think that's a good name for the file. Okay, so now this file has gotten modified and it looks like this. I'm going to review this in a second, but I don't want to have to read that out loud because way too lazy to do that. So let's go here and I'm going to say, pass it in a file and pass in the file.
What have I done today? Today I started with a client in Europe. We spent 2 hours working with them and introducing AI. It was the first time we did a mob. I'm going to skip over a lot of those details because I should not be sharing them on video. After that, I was able to join Ivan and Emily batch. They were doing an AI and agentic code on the lean poker code. We were able to run a Linux machine in the cloud and worked on solving an issue, then turning that into a / command so we can repeatedly hit issues more quickly. Ivan did this neat thing where when it reads the issue, it asks us a bunch of questions using a refine and clarify process, then takes the result and comments on the issue in GitHub. Finally, I gave a talk at the Seattle Software Crafters. Steve had invited me to do it. He called me 7 days ago and said, "Hey, are you still up for it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." January, so I've been putting that together and talking about a lot of the things that have been important to me recently around using my skills as an engineer in different ways.
Oh. So that is very close to what I originally put in, but notice how much better it is, right? All the filler words are gone, names are spelled correctly. This is very interesting here. Look at this. 7 is a 7, which is nice instead of it being spelled out. But also, he called me 7 days ago, even though I think I didn't put that in correctly, the first part. There's actually like a line around that in my cleanup process that sort of says like, for example, if we ate 4 cookies, no ate 5, it would just become we ate 5 cookies. Right? So this is like, it's almost like I'm doing pair programming and the person is just filtering out all the stupid in what I'm saying. Right? It's still essentially what I said, but with a decent amount of stupid removed. I'm going to go to Git and make my commit here. Notice now, like also I have a label with this journal, which is super useful. Okay, let's go back to our overall chart. Next, I would run an analysis on it, and we're going to do that right now. I will say, like during the retreat, this analysis was very interesting and challenging. Challenging is the word I would use. Hopefully it'll be less challenging in front of all of you. Let's find out. Okay, so let's go to it. So going back to Claude. By the way, so the nice part about pipelines is I can clear. So I'm going to clear my context here. So we're starting fresh again. Okay. Please read, spell it right. Analysis process and apply it to my journal. Okay, and now the analysis is different. The analysis pushes back. So now we're introducing 2 patterns, the reverse direction, but also interview pattern.
You mentioned skipping details about the client mob because you shouldn't share them on video. But what did you learn from that session that is okay to share?
The main thing we learned from that session is just once you get people actually using agentic AI, other people want that on their system. It's like if you get used to using it, the moment you take it away, there's a desire.
So the desire comes from experiencing it, not from explaining it. What does that tell you about how you should be introducing AI to people?
I think it's a more generic pattern of almost anything you want to introduce to people. The more you can let them actually experience it, the more it actually gets into them. And probably just a good coaching experience, period.
You say probably like you're rediscovering something you already knew. Where else in your work are you still defaulting to explaining instead of letting people experience?
Possibly I'm giving a talk right now that is doing a lot of explaining.
What would it look like to give that same talk, but have them experience it instead?
That's a good question. I think it would look more like a workshop than a talk. And probably be better for a smaller group of people than I'm doing at the moment. But hopefully by doing a live demo, there'll be an element of that experience.
A live demo is still you doing while they watch. That's closer to explaining with visuals than experiencing. What's stopping you from having them do it?
It's really hard to do an experiential event with a lot of people. And it also takes a lot more prep and effort than I might have been willing to put into it.
You had 7 days notice. Is the issue that you didn't have enough time, or that you said yes to something without negotiating for the format that would actually work?
No, the issue is that I forgot that I said yes until Steve reminded me.
How often do you forget commitments until someone reminds you?
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Can you write up the analysis from that?
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, so anyhow, that will give you a sense of maybe how this went on at the retreat. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so now you'll notice we have two files here. One is the analysis and one is the journal that I created, right? So this is not modifying my journal like the cleanup did. This is creating a new file. And again, I want to experience it. So I'm going to go back to here and take the lazy route.
Analysis. January 22nd, 2026. Core patterns. Experience over explanation. You recognize that people want AI after they use it, not after they hear about it. You correctly identified this as a universal coaching pattern, yet the same day, you gave a talk that was primarily explanation. The yes then forget pattern. You committed to speaking, forgot about it, then had 7 days to prepare when reminded. This left you doing a format, lecture-style talk, that you know is less effective than the experiential alternative. Doing versus doing gap, you articulated clearly that experience beats explanation. You also acknowledged your talk was doing a lot of explaining. The insight exists. The application lags behind. Honest takes. A live demo is not an experience. It's still you performing while others watch. You settled for this middle ground. It takes more prep and effort than I was willing to put in as honest. But it's also a choice. You chose ease over effectiveness. The question about how often you forget commitments went unanswered. That might be worth sitting with. Questions that matter. 1. How often do you forget commitments until someone reminds you? 2. When you say yes to things, are you tracking them in a way that gives you time to prepare properly? 3. What would need to change for you to default to experiential formats instead of talks? 4. Are you overcommitted or underorganized or both? What went well? The client mob session created genuine desire in participants, proof that your instinct about experience is correct. The session with Ivan and Emily Batch on agentic coding with /commands shows you practicing what you preach. Learning by doing. You showed up and delivered despite the short prep time.
All right. And now, again, commit, because knowledge checkpoints. Okay, and now let's go back. So that's the pipeline. First, I vomited out a whole bunch of stuff. Then I had it clean it up. Then I had analysis performed on it. And the really important part of what I want to show here is that first part is occurring in the same document. That last part is not, right? It's taking that core data from the journal and creating something else from it, right? By the way, obviously I use voice here a lot. I'm on a Mac, I'm using Super Whisper, which I really enjoy. And then I'm also using Say, which is just a CLI that comes with your Mac by default. Now I have modified the voice. There's a way you can put a customized voice into it to my partner, which by the way is great in general because I like my partner, and when I hear things in her voice, it's great. However, at the retreat, had the unexpected part of now she was criticizing me, and that made it harder to hear. On Windows, there's also just built-in Windows key H will bring up voice to text for you. And PowerShell, there's a very small amount of PowerShell here you can do to recreate a say command. I usually just put it in a say.ps1 script. Okay, so I want to talk about that pattern, right? Because there's this problem that shows up. There's a lot of statements that show up in our industry. Done is better than perfect, right? Perfect is the enemy of the good. The simplest thing that can possibly work. Yagni, or you ain't going to need it. I'm writing a book with Trisha Broderick. We have a saying that we use over and over again, which is write it wrong and then fix it. All of these are trying to address pretty much the same problem, which often is referred to as just writer's block, but I think of as just getting started. Getting started can be a very high hurdle. And I need ways of getting that down because when you get started, it's going to be bad, right? You need to get started to get that bad in there so we can get it out of there. The vomit pattern, which you just saw, is one way of overcoming that, right? I don't have to worry about whatever I just blabbed because I know like that's just the starting point and good stuff will come from that. It doesn't need to be good, like much less perfect. It can be really bad actually. Right? The vomit pattern is basically you open up a document and you just, voice to text works really well for this, by the way. If you actually try to type, it goes slower. Although I also do this with typing. And then I run the cleanup process on it. The reverse of that, still solving the same problem, is the interview pattern. The interview pattern starts from nothing, right? And you start the process file and it just starts asking you questions. Right. This, by the way, works really good if you have a couple daily journals, because then it can read those and it has a better idea of how to interview you. in the interview process, what you also saw during the analysis, right there, it's doing an interview process because it needs to get more understanding than was in that journal, right? It's going to ask me questions. I'm going to say stuff that say anything. Hey, that's kind of like the vomit pattern again, right? Like now it's pulling vomit from you instead of you pushing vomit on it, but it's still like there's that mix. And interestingly, who you have as an interviewer makes a big difference. For the personal retreat, I use Virginia Satir as my interviewer. Right now, there's like a handful of you who are probably like, wow. And then the rest of you are like, who is she? That's okay. It's not important to this point. But that's not the interviewer I use in general. In general, I actually use a combination of Arlo Belshi and Trisha Broderick. I have no idea what the vector space is for this, but it is magical. Like that is what you just saw was Arlo Belshi and Trisha Broderick interviewing me. Um, it it gives very good results. Also interestingly, the most common thing I will do after a vomit pattern is run a refine and clarify process, which is the interview process, right? Hey, I just vomited a whole bunch of stuff. Go through this, interview me about it, and put together a better thing, right? So the interview pattern and the vomit pattern tend to they both tend to be there, right? Maybe you start with vomit and then go to interview, or maybe you start with interview and give it vomit. But either way, those two things seem to be very highly coupled. And what this creates, the core data, the most important part here is that journal entry. I think of that as the most essential data I have. And the nice thing is, because of the analysis, you remember how I said, like, hey, skip this part? I can tell it to skip parts of my journal. So I can put everything in there and pull out sections that are related to work or personal or to whatever I'm looking at in the moment. If you know anything about data, capture everything. Because you don't get, if you don't get it today, like you're not going to get last week, right? Capture everything. Figure out what you're going to use later. Just capture everything. Here, I opened a document and went there, but that's not always my starting point. There's a couple other starting points that I find interesting. One is Obsidian. So I use Obsidian for note taking. There's a calendar plugin that you can put, and then when you click on the day, it just starts you a new day. I really like that pattern, but the stuff that's in there is not even English sentences. It's just like I'm throwing little pieces of notes in as I go. Another version of the exact same thing is just create a private Slack channel and then just make little posts to yourself during the day to just capture little pieces. And again, because we're an AI, like you can just hit an MCP to both of these. I mean, the Slack, you can just, or Obsidian, you can just, it's a markdown file, you can just point it at the file, and say, read that and then interview me. And then it will take these garbled pieces of one line notes or images or whatever you put in there and give you an even more thoughtful interview to create a daily journal that is actually like even better. There's this pattern from Tigo Forte, Building a Second Brain, really nice book. If you haven't read it, recommended. But the pattern is called code. And the idea here is collect, organize, distill, extract, right? And by separating these processes, you end up with notes. Like the reason I didn't take notes for so much of my life is they were on paper and they never got read, right? Like they didn't end up turning into anything useful. And by separating it out into these steps, there's a much more chance that you're going to extract something useful from your notes. The book is technology agnostic. It's just like, hey, here's how to do it. But the nice thing is when I add technology into it, my daily journal is this collect. And this organize and distill is happening by the process file that exports. The result of that is in the analysis or whatever thing, but that's the extract. And when you put that all together, you can think of this as like, hey, I got my journal entry plus examples of whatever it is I'm trying to get to, my analysis process, my impromptu prompt, all of that comes out with something. But I'm taking my journal entry and I'm turning it into analysis. Or daily status, something that I could post to, you know, managers around the company and say, hey, here's what happened today, which is going to be very different than analysis. I do not want that analysis posted to my managers. They will think I am a crazy person, right? Or I could have it come up with achievements. Hey, what has gone good today or this week? Or I could have it come up with a list of to-dos. You know what I've been doing all week. What do I need to do tomorrow? Help me plan my day. Or I could have an analysis for weak points. What are the things that I'm not doing well that I need to shore up? Or blind spots. What are the technologies I'm not even aware of? Tell me what I don't know that would be relevant to me in the context. That is a thing you cannot do in a Google search or a blog post. What are the things in here that would be worth sharing outside of this company? And in fact, if I do something like this, I usually put an intermediate step where I'll have it read and give me a list of, hey, from the things I'm doing right here, what do you think would be useful? And then I can pick what's useful. Or if there's two things that seem really useful, maybe I'll do two blogs. Or risk analysis. What are the things I need to be paying attention to? Or time allocation. Where am I spending my time? Is that a good use of my time or a bad use of my time? Or habits. What habits am I inadvertently developing? What habits did I want to develop that aren't showing up? Or my OKRs. What can I show my manager to give me a raise? Or an opportunity radar. What should I be paying attention to so I don't look back and say, oh, I missed that opportunity? Or trends. Look at my journal and tell me what's trending in my life, good or bad. Or a performance review. Hey, we got to do this every year anyways. Why not actually do it over data of what happened over the year? And the neat thing about this is, let's say like I get to OKRs and I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have OKRs for, you know, the rest of the year, but I didn't think about it till September. Well, because I have the data and I'm collecting everything, I can run that analysis over the rest of the year. And then I can take the result of those OKRs and combine them when I do my performance review. Hey, look at my OKR analyses. And any one of those things are things that I would think of like you could hire a coach who's really good to help you in one of those aspects. But nowadays, we can summon a coach as long as we have that raw data. And so the question is sort of like, how would you like to be better? Like in what dimension, in what aspect of your life would you like to be better? And you don't just have to choose one. And you can change it the moment you want to. That's an amazing power that we have available to us. By the way, not just me. January 12th, they introduced Claude Cowork. Claude Cowork is agentic code AI formatted in a package that is accessible to people who are not programmers, right? It came from an insight at Anthropic, which is the people who are using Claude Code are doing this stuff. They're using it for things that aren't code. And maybe that power should be available to other people. But this is January 12th, 2026, meaning like that trend just hit Anthropic. And from my understanding, they built this in like under a week and a half. So it just hit them this year. Um, yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you. Any questions?
a lot of good stuff there. There's been some as a different set of chats going on than normal. Certainly, what could possibly go wrong, and this won't go sideways, came up. One thing. So I was playing around with Grok, and Grok has a therapist mode, and
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, Grok, are you a professional therapist?" And it said, "No, I'm not a professional, but I do have learnings from professionals." And then another important thing that I wanted to ask it is, what about my personal privacy? Are you restricted by HIPAA or any of that? And it replied, no, if you need to talk to a professional and need privacy, you should talk to a professional. So,
Right. And this also, by the way, changes a lot based on how you're talking to AI. So, like, if you're talking to AI through an agentic system, you're going through the API, and that actually does respect privacy in a very different way than if you were talking to it on a website. That's not the reason I do it through agentic, but it is a distinct advantage. Any differences between Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, or a VS extension? The VS extension I'm aware of that's not Copilot would be Rue Code. You just saw Windsurf here. I still really like Windsurf, and yet pretty much if I'm doing like if I'm getting to the AI part, I'm going to Claude Code. I will just say that I really like it. I've used Codex as well from OpenAI. I also like. I find not a lot of experiential difference between Codex and Claude Code. I can flip between the two fairly seamlessly. I tend to like Claude a bit better, and I think that is some kind of weird human bias crap. I don't know that I have actual data or anything. It tends to be a little bit faster. I like the way it responds a little bit better. I don't know, and I don't know if it's the same as like like Gemini just had a really neat upgrade, what, 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Like, this is not this is the best AI, and this is not, this is the best tooling.
yeah.
I'll say, like, I like Claude Code. I like Claude as an AI. Um, that is very much in this moment. Like, that might be different next week.
Well, and
Um,
to me, it's important to bring up there's the app on top of AI, and then there's the model you're using underneath it.
yes. Yeah, right. Well, I think with Claude Code, you might be a little bit boxed to Claude, but definitely like in Windsurf, I can switch what my underlying LLM is. And even with that, I still like even I prefer Claude with Claude Code than Claude in Windsurf. Again, I don't have great answers to any of this. I have used Cursor a little bit. So okay, I feel like my stack rank down would be like Claude, Codex, which are both are CLIs, uh, Windsurf, Cursor, Copilot. That's just my opinion.
Mhm.
I don't know what that's worth.
So I use Claude, Cursor, Windsurf. Cursor I use mostly for demos and stuff. I prefer Windsurf over Cursor because it's got a very, very robust plugin into IntelliJ. Whereas
I
Cursor,
also Windsurf's autocomplete is I really like its autocomplete.
yeah.
It feels less
And
clunky for some
yeah,
reason.
Yeah.
yeah. What was that, Lotta?
It feels less clunky also for some reason. I don't know. People love Visual Studio Code. I can't stand it. But Windsor doesn't feel like Visual Studio Code.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's weird because they are so closely related.
yeah.
There was also a question in the chat about Chinese models. I haven't played with Chinese models too much. The place where I would probably do more of that would be if was working at a place that was really like really concerned about privacy. Like I don't even want it leaving. I don't want any information leaving this building, right? That's where I would probably do some kind of self-hosted model. And if I was doing a self-hosted model, there's a good chance I'd be looking at something like DeepSeek. But I haven't done that. That's not been a restriction for me.
There are also plenty of alternatives nowadays for if data privacy is a concern, you can plug into LLM servers or LLM products that keep your data private, that layer on top of Claude, Cursor, Windsurf.
There's a comment here, co-work is so expensive. So my experience with Claude in general has been it's costing me around $20 a month. Um, I know a lot of you are much more token heavy than I am. What is your monthly bill looking like?
I got lucky and my company is paying for it. So
But even
I'm
so, how
I'm at
much is it? 200 a month?
200,000. No, I pay 200 advance, but if you look at how much it would be in API costs, it's at least 1,000 plus months.
Uh,
So I recommend subscription if you're heavy in this. That will save you
the
money.
subscription models do make things better, yeah. Sorry, other questions? There's one thing I will say, like, so I was working with a team out in Boston, and so this was in person, and we started in Copilot, which is what they had available to them. And in week 2, we moved over to Claude, and it was almost seamless. Because I think more important than the technology is the patterns you use with it, right? Like, are you putting stuff in knowledge documents? That's a huge thing, right? The ability for me to say, please read this and do it makes that more reproducible and more extendable. Like, um, are you reversing direction and having an actual collaboration with it versus just telling it to do a thing? Um, like those patterns end up being more important than the specific tools to me. Right. And I think that's like what I would think of as like the bedrock of craftsmanship anyways, which is, it's not the specific language or the specific tools. It's the patterns. And when you learn those patterns and you go to a new context, you can reapply those.
So with the agentic workflow, some of the promising things that I've been hearing about this year is you essentially go in and you can have a ticket uh, that has a bug on it or something like that, or a work item, and you take that ticket and it will automatically, various agents under the covers can now go out, find the code that it's going to be in, or at least that a proposed solution is going to be in. It will give you statistics around that as to here's this line of code that we think you're going to need to change, or this method, and it will give you statistics about that method as to how often it changes, the bugs associated with it, how many people are using it, how many times it's failed is in test runs, yada yada yada, not lotta lotta lotta. Um, and it can get it can give you a lot of metadata that can help you, the developer, inform a better decision as to what you're stepping into and how you're going to fix things.
And a lot of this I still think of just like the power of the CLI tools, right? Like when you saw that first story where I said, go to the GitHub CLI and grab the data for this issue, right? Like the moment you can go to a CLI and grab stuff, yeah, you can go to GitHub or go to Git and find out how much this file changes. Go to Sonar and find like go to things, use tools. That's what we do as programmers. We use tools. That's what makes us so powerful. Right? We are not writing code in notebooks by hand with pencil. Like that's what you used to do with punch cards. Like, and you didn't get a lot of code written. Like
Mhm.
we use tools to allow us to think more powerfully and be more powerful.
I've even heard of some people not only saving the metadata out of like the plan or the to-do list, but saving context out with changes as well too.
So, I mean, I think of that as extract document still. Like I rarely will keep, that's not entirely true. Like, okay, so I'll show you one place where I kept the whole context. So, okay, so for context, that word is overloaded at this moment. Um, this flow chart, right? Like, how did I make this flow chart? And the answer is I made it in quotes here in Mermaid. Is actually in the thing. So if I visualize this to that. So I made that in Mermaid. But my Mermaid isn't anywhere near good enough to make this. So what I actually did is I had a conversation with chat. This one I actually did do in Windsurf. And I saved it and kept it here, right? But like you can see here, it's like, hey, I want to do this stuff. And then it does some of it. And then I can continue to iterate through here and be like, okay, well, the first thing I want is tools, right? Or later down here. Nice. After I run the cleanup process, I have a version 1 document, but you forgot to add people MD. It's like run cleanup. Like I can keep tweaking and modifying this thing that I'm building, right? And then when I had this all done, script everything, I had it write me a Python script that would export that to an SVG, and then I can import the SVG into PowerPoint, right? Which has the added advantage that you can right click and say like expand and you actually get PowerPoint objects, except for that did not work so well for me because PowerPoint on Mac is not paying attention to a newer feature in SVG. So when I went to do that, it turned to garbage. So I actually had it, when I run that, it creates a PowerPoint as well. So I could bring in the PowerPoint, which I could actually use properly. But anyhow, the point being, I did save this conversation just because when I want to talk about this, it is useful to have this conversation to actually show like what does it look like to evolve it. I was also very, very good about committing after every single change. So if I ever wanted to make like an animated image of how this tree changed, I could. Have not wanted to do that yet, but you know, it's possible. Save everything, capture everything,
All the things.
all the things. All right. Are we at a close here, or do we still have more we should talk?
I think I'm seeing the popcorn seems to have stopped. I'm going to go ahead and stop